abduction, false imprisonment, and extortion. Those are very serious charges as we watch these pictures from Neverland, the black vehicles, the SUVs, the motorcade that's about to leave to head over to the courthouse. That first count is potentially the end as far as Michael Jackson's freedom is concerned.
All of the felony counts put him in great jeopardy. Count one, as people listen, I think it is safe to say it was the weakest count against Michael Jackson. The charge, in layman's terms, was that Jackson and the people who worked for him conspired to keep the accuser and his family essentially prisoner in Neverland, around Neverland, in the period after the Martin Bashir documentary ran in 2003, to control them, to control the response to this documentary. The evidence against Jackson, I think it's safe to say, was very thin. There were other people involved in perhaps controlling the movements of the accuser's family, but there was precious little evidence that Jackson himself participated in that, and I think Jackson had has the best chance of acquittal on that count.
The counts 2 through 5 involved lewd and lascivious acts upon a minor under 14 years of age. Counts 2 through 5.
That's the heart of the case. Those 4 counts are child molestation. The first 2 counts are based on the testimony of the accuser himself. The second 2 counts are based on the testimony of the accuser's brother, who claimed to see the accuser being molested by Jackson. But child molestation, counts 2 through 5, that's the heart of the case. If he's convicted of those carry the likely longest prison sentences, and I think, that's Jackson's greatest jeopardy.
We see the motorcade, some cars beginning to move. I think that's what we're seeing. The gates of Neverland Ranch have now opened. I suspect we're going to see some of those cars bringing Michael Jackson and his entourage from the Neverland Ranch about 30 miles or so to Santa Maria. That's where the courthouse is for the reading of the verdict in all of these counts. We'll see as this motorcade, I suspect, yeah, there it is. Those are the black SUVs. We assume Michael Jackson is inside one of those vehicles. They'll be driving out. In the past, do they get police escorts? Do you know, Jeff, when you've been out there?
They have not had police escorts for most of the journey. For when they get into Santa Maria, there's sometimes police cars that have escorted them. But one thing that's interesting to remember as we see this highly dramatic conclusion to the trial is that during the trial, there were many days when there were very few spectators and not a lot of attention, so there was really no need for a police escort. Here, of course, you have hundreds more people present around the courtroom than were there during the 16 weeks of the trial.
Count 6 involves an attempt to conduct a lewd act against a minor.
That's attempted child molestation. That is basically related to counts 2, 3, 4, and 5, part of the child molestation counts that are the heart of the case.
And then counts 7 through 10 are felony charges of administering an intoxicating agent to a minor in order to facilitate a felony. That's basically giving a minor an alcoholic beverage.
Right, giving a minor an alcoholic beverage in order to commit a felony. And what's interesting about counts 7 through 10 is that there is the possibility of what's called a lesser included offense. The jury could acquit Michael Jackson of the felony versions of providing alcohol to a minor, but convict him of misdemeanors. And if Michael Jackson is only convicted of misdemeanors, I don't think he will have his bail revoked, and I think he will count this trial as a win.
The court is now suggesting the verdict will be read at 4:45 Eastern, 1:45 p.m. on the West Coast, but we see this motorcade beginning slowly to move. I see 2 vehicles, 3 vehicles in this motorcade. I don't know how many vehicles altogether there will be, but it doesn't look like they have yet gone through the main gate at Neverland Ranch. On the left part of the screen, we see the ranch itself, the motorcade winding through, and here they come. These are the vehicles going through the gate, the main gate at Neverland. Now they'll have, what, about 30 miles or so till they get to the courthouse in Santa Maria?
About 30 miles, and you notice that shot just before they came through the gates. The scale of Neverland is just really hard to describe. It is approximately 3,000 acres, this estate, complete with an amusement park and a zoo and many buildings. This is the vast, unbelievable lifestyle that Michael Jackson is leaving behind. And of course, we need, you know, it may well be for the last time.
I see 4 vehicles now. Maybe there are more, but at least in this picture, this aerial shot that we're getting, we see 4 vehicles moving. They don't look like they're going 60 miles an hour, which would give them about a half an hour drive if they're going 30 miles. So this could be delayed. Right now, we're being told about 4:45. That's when the court has set the verdict to be read, 4:45 p.m. Eastern, 1:45 on the West Coast. We'll see if that actually happens. It looks like there are 4 vehicles that's being chased by a motorcycle at the very end of that motorcade. We don't know if that motorcycle is part of the formal motorcade that's taking Michael Jackson and his team to the courthouse, or that could be a paparazzi chasing them as well, having seen how they operate on the motorcycles over the years. That's very possible as well. As we take a look at this motorcade winding its way from Neverland, from the Neverland Ranch over to the courthouse, we have to get a sense of who is going to be joining Michael Jackson once that verdict is read. Jeffrey, you've spent some time inside that courtroom. Give us a little flavor. Besides his lead defense attorney, who else is going to be there?
Well, you know, I don't know who will be there today. There has been sort of a rotating cast of family members. The people there most often are his mother and father. Catherine and Joe Jackson have been there often. 3 of his brothers, Randy, Tito, and Jermaine, have often been in court. So 4 of the 5, Jackson 5, have often been in court. And his sister LaToya and his sister Janet have been in court occasionally. You know, more of them have been present in court for the big moments of the trial. So I suspect some or all of that group will be there today.
Ted Rollins is outside the courthouse in Santa Maria. Ted, I suspect there must be an enormous amount of anticipation and excitement that has developed over this past half hour as we watch these live pictures of Michael Jackson's motorcade making its way from the Neverland Ranch to Santa Maria and the courthouse.
Oh, clearly the fans that are gathered out here, Wolf, are in a sort of a frenzy. They're chanting, and there's a bit of worrisome faces too. You know, this is a big deal for them, of course, and a big deal for Michael Jackson, and you could feel the anticipation and the nervousness, if you will, too, surrounding the outside of this courthouse. Folks have been outside basically holding vigil since the jury got this case a week ago Friday, and they have been out here day and night through deliberations, waiting and chanting and taking turns leading the troops, and now this is it, and you can definitely feel it outside the courthouse. You know what, Michael Jackson has a lot of people that have vocally stood up and supported him. I noticed when we were showing the shots of the motorcade leaving Neverland Ranch, early on in the shot, you saw a string of employees that were all lined up arm in arm as the 4 SUVs drove by near the main house heading towards the gate. One thing is for sure, they're not going to make it here by 1:30. The court has obviously changed the reading to 1:45, and if it takes them longer to get here, they'll change it again. The court has tried to get this verdict read as soon as possible so that it does not allow more people to come here to the courthouse, but clearly they are going to wait for Michael Jackson.
You know that territory quite well, and as we see this motorcade driving, we just lost the picture briefly from these aerial shots that we're getting. Is there any way they can make it there in a half an hour? They literally only a past 3 minutes. They left the main gate at Neverland. How realistic, how long will it take them, do you suspect, Ted?
It should take them 40 to 45 minutes. That's assuming that they're not stopped for any reason. It is, they're on a sort of an off road right now. It's an off freeway, which, you know, you're lucky to do about 50 miles an hour, especially when you have 4 SUVs trailing each other. Clearly, it's going to take them 40, 45 minutes at best, and it may take them a little bit longer depending on what they encounter once they get close to Santa Maria. Each day, as the motorcade approaches the city, a group of motorcycle cops here in Santa Maria go meet the motorcade and escort them through traffic lights around the courthouse. They say they do it for security, and I think mainly they do it for Santa Maria residents, not necessarily for Michael Jackson, so that they can get him in and out as quickly as possible so he doesn't hold up traffic. So, you know, I think that it'll take 40 to 45 minutes at best, and I think that the court knows that, and they will wait patiently for him to arrive.
Do you know, Ted, if that lead vehicle, that white vehicle we're seeing in these pictures now, is a police car, or is it just an average person who's driving along on this two-lane highway and just happens to be leading this Michael Jackson motorcade?
I don't know, and clearly it could be either one. If it is law enforcement, it is an unmarked car. It could be a news organization, someone with a camera, or just a fan wanting to get into the middle of it. And it looks like they're leading the group at this point. No way of knowing until we get a ground shot of that vehicle.
It looks like they're not moving very quickly either. I suspect if they're saying 4:45 Eastern, 1:45 Pacific, it'll probably go back to 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock on the West Coast. There you see the whole motorcade stopped as it's about to make a right turn, onto another highway heading towards Santa Maria. The motorcade continuing along this way. The makeup of the jury, Jeffrey Toobin, what, if anything, can we surmise from the makeup of the jury?
Well, it's eight women and 4 men, largely middle class. No African Americans on the jury, which has drawn some notice. But Santa Barbara County has very few African Americans, so it's not all that unusual to have an all African, having no African Americans on the jury. One interesting thing about this jury was that even though there were, I believe, 6 or 8 alternates, throughout this long trial, not one juror left the jury, which certainly in my experience is very unusual. All of these jurors came every day. They obviously had a stake in the outcome, were very serious, were very meticulous about their work. Many of the jurors took extensive notes, filling several notebooks. But as for drawing any conclusion about the verdict from the makeup of the jury, that's more predicting than I'll be able to do.
Ted, do you want to weigh in on the jury? Any thoughts that you've been speaking to a lot of legal analysts out there on the scene, the makeup of this jury and any inclinations they may or may not have?
And one of the things that is very noticeable watching this jury is that they get along. They seem to joke around at the appropriate times. They're serious at the appropriate times. And they all seem to be together when there is some sort of an inside joke that was half told in the jury room and the rest of it in the courtroom. They're all in on it. A lot of times in juries you see factions and you see one individual who's doing his own thing or her thing. Not in this case. It really, they seemed as though they were getting along, and I think that we'll find, if and when they talk about their experience, that was the case. And I'm sure it would have helped the deliberative process a great deal. Obviously, they have come to a verdict. It is not a hung jury. We haven't seen any hints of any problems with this jury. And I think that was evident day in and day out, watching these men and women work together. And some of it was very, very tedious. Some of it very, very emotional. Through it all, they all seem to be one group.
Jeffrey Toobin, in terms of the amount of hours, the amount of days this jury has considered this verdict, what, if anything, goes through your mind? Because early on, when we spoke, we knew it was going to take several days, given how long the actual trial lasted.
Well, I think this is about what you would think of as an average length of deliberation for a case of this duration. This was a complicated case involving lots of different charges, and one thing I think the Jackson camp was hoping was for an instant verdict, because given the complexity of this case, if they had come back after a day or even 2 days, that would have shown that they simply rejected the government's theory, because there is no way you could work your way through 16 weeks of testimony, 10 different charges in a day or two. Now, having gone on for about 6 days, it is enough time to go through all the evidence. This is sort of a reasonable amount of time, and I think that has got to be cause for concern in the Jackson camp, because there is enough time to have gone through all the evidence and said, there's enough here to convict him.
And Ted Rowlands, as you well remember, since you were inside the courtroom for much of this, including the end of this trial, that videotape of the accuser, the young boy accusing Michael Jackson, that was a powerful way for the prosecution to end its case.
Yes, it was, in that the jury got to hear the accuser and the accusations again. It had been months since the accuser took the stand. And when the prosecution was allowed by this judge to play this first interview that the accuser had with sheriff deputies, it brought it all back. It sort of washed out the conspiracy, which was a very difficult charge to try to prove, and it brought it back to, this is a case about a man who was accused of molesting a boy. That said, Thomas Mesereau, in his close, used that tape as well and encouraged jurors to go and watch the tape and look for inconsistencies in the tape, saying that the tape is exactly what you would expect if a young man was lying. And that is exactly the route that Mesereau took from the very beginning. He pulled no punches. He said, this family and this child is making it up. They're trying to extort Michael Jackson. So jurors could look at the tape both ways once they're in the jury room. That said, in the courtroom, yes, I think it was effective for the prosecution.
Well, I was in the courtroom when Ron Zonin, the prosecutor, played that final videotape. And the thing that hit me is that this was a trial with more than 100 witnesses, for 4 months long. But the simplicity of that closing was very effective and very powerful, because what he said to the jury was, if you believe this boy, if you believe what this child is saying, or he was a child then, he's not exactly a child now, he's 16, this case is over. All the jury needs to believe is one witness, and that was the witness that they closed with, and it was powerful stuff.
Robert Shapiro is the famed criminal defense attorney who represented O.J. Simpson and knows what is going through the minds of a criminal defense attorney in this particular case. About 30 minutes or so, we're estimating, Bob, before the verdict is read. Give us a little flavor of what must be going through the defense team's mind right now.
I'll tell you what's going through my mind right now is a high anxiety, anxious, palpitations, because I followed the case and I'm interested in the case, and I can put myself in the same chair as some of the lawyers. What this is, Wolf, is this is going to the doctor to get the results of a biopsy. This is the Kentucky Derby when you have a photo finish. It's the Super Bowl when there's an instant replay of the winning touchdown. There's just no way to describe it.
Do you have a sense, based on the 7 days, 32 hours, that the jury deliberated, the makeup of the jury, 8 women, 4 men, the length of the trial, what we might anticipate right now, Bob? You know California law, you know California juries. You're one of the best in the business.
Not my personal opinion, but what I think the jury will do in this case is render a verdict that will not have Michael Jackson singing "Beat It" today. I think he's going to be convicted.
And on the basis of one specific piece of evidence, or the whole nature, the whole trial?
Well, first, the little boy was the first witness to testify, and as Jeff Toobin has told us, the last witness to testify. He testified without cross-examination, which is unheard of in closing a case, because he was allowed to testify by videotape. And his testimony is uncontroverted. Nobody got up and said, he's lying, it didn't happen that way. The defense, rather, is the mother put pressure on the son to make it up. And I think that's a real tenuous argument to make, Wolf.
Let me let Jeff Toobin weigh in on that point, Jeff.
Well, it's just, I think Bob is right that, the accuser is the whole case. And, it is a difficult position for Michael Jackson to argue that, well, it is true, as he said on videotape in the Martin Bashir documentary, I sleep in the same bed as this boy, and the boy and he were together in that documentary, but there was no sexual relationship between us. Now, of course, the jury has heard both Michael Jackson's admission that they slept in the same bed and the boy testifying that there was, in fact, sexual contact between them. That's a tough charge to defend against, and if Michael Jackson is convicted, that's the reason he's going to be convicted.
But Jeff, and I want to bring Bob back in a second, but when you say that's the case right there, what about all the other evidence that was brought in that the judge allowed to bring in of earlier accusations against Michael Jackson?
Well, that's why this case will be vigorously argued on appeal if Michael Jackson is convicted, is because what Judge Melville did is he allowed the jury to hear about 5 prior allegations of child molestation that Michael Jackson was never criminally charged with, and 3 of those 5 boys who were allegedly the victims testified that it never happened. But the jury had this evidence put in front of it, and even though the courts have so far always upheld this provision of California law, Section 1108 of the Evidence Code, I think that's going to be a possibly successful grounds for appeal here, because this was so much part of the prosecution's case, not the allegation against this boy, but the allegations against Michael Jackson and other boys.
These are live pictures outside the courthouse in Santa Maria, California. They're awaiting the arrival of Michael Jackson and his party. 4 vehicles driving from the Neverland Ranch. We expect in the next 15 to 30 minutes for that motorcade to make its way to the courthouse in Santa Maria. Michael Jackson will walk inside, as he has so many days over the course of this trial, and he will hear the verdict against or in favor of him, and the ramifications of all of that. Robert Shapiro is helping us better understand this process. What about that point that Jeffrey Toobin just made, Bob, that the earlier accusations were admissible, and this could be an element for a possible appeal if he is convicted?
Well, the first point, Jeffrey, is right on the money, and that is that the prior acts have such a compelling weight with jurors. Wolf, gave a lecture to California Judges Association about 6 weeks ago, and there was a poll of judges, and 36 judges had tried cases where prior acts were admitted. Of those 36, 35 resulted in convictions. As far as an appeal, you know, in my mind, the appellate lawyers, which I call the God forbid lawyers, are almost irrelevant in this case. If Michael Jackson is convicted, he's going to be in jail for 6 months to 2 years pending the appeal. And from my perspective, it seems that 1 day in jail for Michael Jackson will be more than he can manage.
Well, on that point, Bob, since he is a physically sick individual and has been in the hospital on several days over the course of this trial alone, would the system allow some sort of hospitalization in lieu of actual jail time in order to accommodate his health?
No, the judge, once he is remanded, the judge has absolutely no authority over the sheriff's department, who will be in charge of his welfare until the date of sentencing. And at the date of sentencing, if he's sentenced to county jail, it will then go back to the sheriff's department. If he's sentenced to prison, which is the most likely outcome if he is convicted, it will be in the hands of what we call the adult authority, which run the prisons themselves. So they will make all determinations after the judge issues his sentence.
All right, stand by, Bob. I want you to stay with us as we await the verdict of Michael Jackson. We may be as quick as 15 minutes away, maybe 30 minutes away. We're waiting for the motorcade bringing Michael Jackson and his entourage to the Santa Maria courthouse. I want to bring Ted Rowlands and walk us through the process, how we will learn. When I say we, I mean those of us in the news media and the viewers, the listeners watching right now. Ted, how will we get that information as it unfolds?
Well, the judge has allowed for an audio feed of the reading of the verdict. So the court clerk, Lorna Fry, will read count by count, starting with the conspiracy charge and then moving through the molestation charges, the attempted molestation, and the alcohol charges. And we will hear that real time, assuming that the audio feed works. We have contingency plans in case the audio feed does not work for any reason. We have another way to get the information as soon as we can on the air, but we're hoping and we assume that the audio feed will work and everybody will hear it at the same time as it is happening.
So in other words, the judge will convene the session, and then we will be able to hear just the audio of what happens as the foreman is questioned and the judge gets all of the various verdicts. Is that right?
Right. We're not sure when the audio feed will start, whether it will be when the judge walks into court or when the judge asks the four men in this case, if they've reached a verdict. And maybe we'll get to listen in as they transfer the verdict over to the court clerk. But we will be able to hear from the moment that the court clerk starts to read count by count the jury's decisions.
Ted, it's Jeff Toobin here. Can I ask you another sort of technical question that I'm curious about? Is there a plan, if Jackson is convicted, of course, then they will move to the question of bail. Will the microphone still be on while they argue bail, or is the plan only to broadcast the announcement of the verdict itself?
We believe that the plan will be for the verdict and only the verdict. And as soon as the verdict has been read, whether we'll be able to hear the judge thank the jury or maybe hear a little bit of the next phase before it's shut off, we'll have to wait and see. But our understanding is that we will hear the verdict read, and that will be it.
Bob Shapiro, Judge Rodney Melville, who's the presiding judge in this case, has been very strict in moving it along and preventing television cameras from being inside, in contrast to the big case that you handled, the O.J. Simpson case. What kind of grades, what do you sense of how this judge has handled this Michael Jackson case?
Well, I think in the last 10 years, Wolf, judges in California and across the United States have learned a big lesson from what happened in the Simpson case. They are much more circumspect. They are trying as much as they can to keep things outside the media, to keep these cases in the courtroom, and to try to not have the jury influenced in any way, shape, or form. It's exceedingly difficult for a judge, a lawyer, or anybody participating in a case that's on camera to say that they don't change their demeanor, they don't change their actions, they don't change the way they speak. It affects everyone. So even though I am in favor of cameras in the courtroom, I'm in favor of cameras that do not editorialize, that just show what the jury is looking at, and that is the witness on the witness stand.
Would the lawyers have been behaved any differently, significantly differently, do you believe, Bob, had there been television cameras allowed inside?
I wouldn't say significantly different, Wolf, because there does come a point when your job comes before anything. But there are always going to be moments where a lawyer may try to send a message in the event there's a hung jury, may try to do other things that could influence future activities. As far as the questions they're going to ask, no, that wouldn't change at all. But it might change some of the arguments, and it might change some of the positions they say in open court.
Ted Rowlands, how many people have gathered? These are live pictures. We see the attorney, I assume these are live pictures, the attorney going through the metal detectors, Thomas Mesereau, the criminal defense attorney that's been leading the criminal defense. He's already inside. Obviously, he got to the courthouse a lot more quickly, Jeffrey Toobin, than did Michael Jackson, who's still on his way.
And there is Tom Mesereau, as he often did during the trial, waiting to receive the motorcade carrying his client, Michael Jackson. And there was certainly a memorable scene during the day that Michael Jackson was late for court, where all of us saw Mesereau talking urgently into his cell phone, begging Michael Jackson to get to court. That was the day, of course, that he showed up in his blue pajamas. And here, it obviously seems like there is no, he's looking at his watch, but it's not the same kind of crisis in terms of, will the judge be angry? Everybody knows he's on his way, it looks like we're proceeding more or less according to the schedule that the judge set out.
So he's there basically, Jeffrey, to be outside to receive Michael Jackson, to escort him, to walk in with him once he's there.
Absolutely, and it is really a physical connection between defense lawyer and client. At this moment, defense lawyers, you often see, putting their arms around clients. They are, the legal part of their job is done, but it is an emotional and almost physical kind of support that's given now.
Who are the people surrounding him, Ted Rowlands, Thomas Mesereau? Do you know these individuals?
Yes, the woman next to Thomas Mesereau is Susan Yu. She is one of his co-counsels. She did most of the briefing, argued a few things outside the presence of the jury. Behind Mesereau with the glasses underneath the tree is Bob Sanger, and he did a lot of the arguments, most of the technical things. He argued a lot of the motions and handled some of the witnesses, but Thomas Mesereau handled 90% of the important witnesses, if you will, in this case. The other individual is an investigator, a local man that they hired to basically do interviews throughout the trial, and he would come in and out of court every day. You could see the motorcade over on the side of the other screen. They are still on U.S. Highway 101, but they are getting close to Santa Maria. Obviously, they're in cell phone communication with Tom Mesereau and the defense team, and they will be exiting fairly soon here. I can't tell where they are specifically in terms of exits, but they have entered the greater Santa Maria area where you're seeing exit options. Presumably, they are about 5 minutes or less away from entering here. And this is a daily sort of ritual, if you will, where Tom Mesereau either escorts Michael Jackson out after the day or goes and actually meets him as he enters when he gets to the courthouse. A lot more at stake here today. When Michael Jackson leaves these SUVs, there's a chance that he may not be able to get back into his black car and be carried away. He may be in a sheriff's van, depending how things go. That said, if he is found not guilty, one can imagine the type of party atmosphere which will be outside this courthouse. I must say, Wolf, that today or right now, it's not just fans. A lot of people from the Santa Maria community are obviously coming to the courthouse here, people who are not holding the Michael Jackson signs, some people that obviously knew that the verdict is coming, and they have made their way here to the courthouse as well.
Bob Shapiro, I assume you know Tom Mesereau, the famed criminal defense community out in California being a relatively small group. Do you know him?
I know him quite well, Wolf.
Tell us, talk a little bit about him and how he's done representing this high-profile pop star.
I think he's done an outstanding job. He is very, very accomplished. He's very smart. He is an expert cross-examiner, and Michael Jackson got the best defense that was available. The difficult thing for Tom in this case was that last witness on the videotape and the decision whether or not to have Michael Jackson take the witness stand. Even though that's the client's decision, usually the lawyers have dictate really what's going to happen. And in this case, he was really in a very, very difficult position because I know from previous experience where I have been on the other side suing Michael Jackson, and my partner Skip Miller actually tried a case in the same courthouse against Michael Jackson, that he is a very, very poor witness. And it would seem that if he did take the witness stand, that might just be the end of him on his own testimony. However, there's a big risk in not taking the witness stand. First, Mesereau told the jury they would hear from Michael Jackson. And in a case like this, we're all accustomed now to the television term, he said, or he said, she said. And in this case, it's only he said.
And when he said at the opening statement, Thomas Mesereau, Bob, that the jury would hear from Michael Jackson, the implication was they would hear from him on the stand, but they did hear from him in that video, that documentary that they released, which I suppose he could have been referring to in his opening statement. Is that fair?
I think that would be a nice way to put spin on it, Wolf. but I think when he made his opening statement, he made a commitment to the jury that they would hear Michael Jackson from the witness stand in that courtroom.
What do you think, Jeffrey?
You know, I agree with Bob that was a rare misstep by Tom Mesereau during this trial. I too thought Mesereau really did an excellent job. You know, his cross-examinations of the accuser, of the accuser's mother, were really superb. But you know, there really was no reason to promise that Michael Jackson was going to testify, and the defense, the prosecution, in their summation, made much of Mesereau's failure to deliver some of his promises made in opening statements. But I think Mesereau made the only possible choice he could in keeping Michael Jackson off the witness stand. I just thought he would have been a terrible witness. As Bob points out, he has been a terrible witness in previous civil cases. But also, I mean, this is a guy who has said on camera that he thinks it's appropriate for 40-year-old men to sleep in the same bed with 12-year-old boys. Imagine trying to explain a comment like that to a jury, which is what he would have to do if he took the witness stand. It is simply inexplicable to most people that someone could think that's normal behavior, and for him to have to explain it at length, which he would have had to do, would have sunk his case right there.
There has been some suggestion, Bob Shapiro, that the guidelines, the instructions that the judge gave the jury, nearly 100 pages, were so technical, were so complicated, that it almost made the life of the jury impossible. I don't know if you saw a piece, there was a long piece in the New York Times on this just over this past weekend, and in the end, the jury might have to simply neglect to go into to understand fully all those instructions that the judge gave them. What do you make of that argument?
I think it's correct. The jury instructions in California are legal fictions. For example, the jury is instructed not to consider the fact that the defendant did not take the witness stand in the case. Jurors subconsciously are going to consider it, and in this case, as Jeff correctly pointed out,